We have officially reached the quarter century mark in the 2000s. We played 25 seasons, obviously by quarter century, that's what that means, but we played 25 seasons. And I was asked to name my all quarter century team. So, with that said, we're going to have that today. We're also going to talk a little bit about this College Sports Commission that we reported on a week or two ago now. Some updates have come out on that, and then some updates coming out of East Lansing, Michigan that we're going to want to talk about. Welcome into Armchair Analysis, this Tuesday edition. Hope you guys had a good Memorial Day weekend. I enjoyed some time with family. Unfortunately, that led to not getting a video yesterday, but it is what it is. We're back on track, and it leads up to preview season starting on June 1st, where we kick it off with Florida State. So make sure you stick around. If you're new here, subscribe, like, leave a comment. Whatever you got to do to make sure that these videos hit your sub boxes or your recommended box more often, because you are not going to want to miss preview season when it gets started. We're talking every single Power 5 team for 67 days straight, plus Notre Dame. It's going to be a really good time. Hopefully you guys will stick around. With that said, let's go ahead and get into today's subjects. And let's kick it off with this. College Sports Commission is going to be paused indefinitely. The formation of this College Sports Commission that we reported on, where Nick Saban was, the guy that was expected to be the head of this whole entire thing, headed up by current President Donald Trump. The announcement of this being paused is not necessarily saying that it will not happen, but it is being paused again indefinitely. Congress intends to pursue legislation addressing major issues in college sports, so it's not gone forever. This is going to certainly come back, at least given that side, the DC side of things. There is no timetable currently at this time for any return or any possible updates to come out of it, but there is talks of planning and coordinating still going on in the meantime, just kind of waiting until we get the actual details and the true following through of said College Sports Commission. Now, again, I think it's going to be a good thing once it actually happens, but until we get there, it's kind of just a non-factor, a non-story even. Just one of those things that you want to continue to follow, because how it could affect and shape the future of college sports, I don't think can be understated if done and put together the correct way. So I figured it's something worth at least bringing up here today. We had some recent news come out of East Lansing, Michigan, and getting this information from CBS Sports' Cody Nagel. You can find that again on cbssports.com. Michigan State has received a notice of allegations for self-reported recruiting violations during the Mel Tucker era. What does this mean currently is really largely unknown. The details of this have not been released yet to the public, and Michigan State has said that they have been told that they really can't speak on it until the NCAA releases their full report, which has not been received by Michigan State yet. But the notice of allegations was delivered on April 29th. It was self-reported back in August 2023. And again, we're just kind of waiting on full details. What should you expect from this? To be completely honest, if we're looking at this from the perspective of what happened with Michigan, if you want to go back to Burgergate, I would expect very similar results. I would expect, and truth be told, it won't even be results for the current team. It might be potentially a monetary fine, potentially a slight reduction in scholarships at most. And honestly, I think that's becoming even more of an outdated system. It will likely become a monetary thing for the university, and we move on. I don't really see it needing to be more than this. Everybody who was on that coaching staff, anybody who would have been affected in that regard, is long gone. Mel Tucker was fired shortly thereafter, and we all kind of know the fallout that happened from that. The whole idea here that this could result in anything more would really be preposterous, really even just ridiculous to say at this point. Again, I expect maybe monetary penalty at most, and we move on. And that's what it should be. That's the way these recruiting violations, especially for teams whose coaching staff would have been accused, are no longer there. Is there really a need to make this a bigger deal? No. Am I going to? No, because it's, at the end of the day, what does it really do for anybody? It's again just it feels very outdated of a penalty here in 2025, given the current state of college sports and even more specifically college football. So with those two little tidbits of information out of the way, I have my 2 deep and sometimes even 3 deep roster that I would put together, and how I would like at least the first, again, the players that you would see on the field the most, what I would like it to look like if I were putting together my quarter century team from the first, again, 25 years of college football to this point here in the 2000s, which has been, this is a lot of fun. And shout out to my good friend RJ for throwing that in the comments in the video on Friday. Had a lot of fun putting this together. It was actually tougher than I thought it would be. And it really made me sit back and think about what I wanted to do and how I wanted it to look. I don't know that this is going to be your greatest roster. I didn't go out of my way to... What I ended up doing, instead of finishing that thought, what I ended up doing was going with guys that were influential to me and influential into how I watched college football over the course of growing up. So there's certainly going to be, I would say, at least a slight bit of love towards, most specifically, the Big Ten, especially when we go to the defensive side of the football. But on the offensive side, I think we have a really good mix, and I think it came together really solid. So I'm excited, and hopefully you guys are too, to hear this list out. We're going to start with quarterback, and my starter for the first 25 years of college football, if I were to go back, would be Tim Tebow. Of course, a Heisman Trophy winner, was a finalist multiple times, was a 2-time national champion, and really the heart and soul of the Florida Gators from that 2006 to 2010 seasons. One of the 2006 to 2009, sorry. One of the most influential players to me growing up. It was my favorite player. It still probably is my favorite player that I've ever gotten a chance to watch in my lifetime. And really, this is cool because this does go back to when I was born in 2000. So understanding that this is going to be a little bit heavy from the late 2000s, like about 2006 on, when I first started watching. Understand that there are going to be some guys that maybe I just didn't get the chance to see and didn't get the chance to be on this list for that reason. But moving on to number 2, Joe Burrow, of course, would be on this list. He's another one of my favorite players. I'm very big about the quarterback position. And I guess I should say that what I would also do is I would have Nick Saban as the head coach, if I could lay this out perfectly. Nick Saban, head coach, Ryan Day, offensive coordinator, and Kirby Smart as my defensive coordinator. And then these rosters as a whole. At running back, I would go with Christian McCaffrey, along with Darren McFadden of Arkansas. And if you saw Darren McFadden play, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you have not, there's plenty of highlights around to go and educate yourself. But there's so many great running backs. I could always talk about Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, 2 Heisman Trophy winners. We could always go and talk about other guys who were in these conversations. Of course, I could go back to the early 2000s. LaDainian Tomlinson would be a guy who certainly could be a part of this list. I could go back to last year, and we could talk most certainly, and I mean most certainly, man, why what is going on in my brain right now. It is 5 o'clock in the morning. Don't misunderstand. Um, Man, why am I having such a hard time here? Now, I'm going to leave this in because ultimately struggles do happen. But wow. Um, Ashton GT. Wow. I mean, I had Jay Ajayi and Doug Martin stuck in my head. But Ashton GT, of course, could go in this list. We could always talk about him. I mean, realistically, there's entirely too many. Najee Harris, even too many guys that could go into this list. Melvin Gordon was a guy that I heavily considered, along with Jonathan Taylor. But I ended up going with Chris McCaffrey, Darren McFadden. I thought that was two of the most dynamic players, and arguably two of the guys that were, I thought, more deserving of Heisman trophies. And if they played in any other year than when they did, they likely would have won them. But unfortunately, McCaffrey being on the West Coast kind of hurt his stock for it. And of course, McFadden, just playing for Arkansas, I think, was the ultimate killer in his opportunity. At wide receiver, I went with Percy Harvin, Alshon Jeffries, and Michael Crabtree. There's probably, and I would say almost certainly, better players in college football and at the wide receiver position specifically. Tavon Austin's the first one that comes to mind. And I wanted so badly to get Tavon Austin in here. But Percy Harvin was arguably the most cohesive with Tim Tebow. And if Tim Tebow's my starter, I want the best wide receiver from there. And Harvin's speed and just dynamic ability, I thought was unmatchable during that time for Florida, which is why I would put him up there. Alshon Jeffries gives you the size and the overall athleticism that I think he would be one of the best players, especially in the right system in today's day and age. And then Michael Crabtree, I mean, we saw what he did for Texas Tech. He was arguably the heart and soul of that team, led, of course, on offense by Graham Harrell, who was certainly another option for me as an offensive coordinator. But I really loved what that group of wide receivers could be. At tight end, I got Kyle Rudolph, one of my favorite players to ever don the gold helmet at Notre Dame. And then Kyle Pitts really kind of came on as a surprise for me. I didn't know who I was going to go with at tight end. Kyle Pitts, I thought the way that he kind of broke on the scene with Kyle Trask at quarterback and being just so athletic in the position, he really stuck out to me. And again, in today's day and age, I think you need those athletic but big-bodied tight ends. That's where Kyle Pitts would come in. On my offensive line, any order, but Marquise Pouncey would be the center point, would be the center on this team. But I also threw Jake Long, of course, in there, Cyrus Kwanjo, DJ Fluker, Leo Collins, and Laramie Tunsil. A bunch of SEC guys, I know, but those are the guys in my mind that came first when I was thinking about who I would want to have protecting Tebow or Burrow, whoever would be the starter. Going to the defense, again, going to be led by Kirby Smart. And this one is where it would certainly go down to personal opinion and who I got to see more. And there are some guys that really opened my eyes from a young age and from an early standpoint of me watching the sport to go into these lists. So at edge, I have Jadeveon Clowney and Ryan Kerrigan. You know one of those names, and you likely know another, especially if you're an NFL fan and you've watched the Commanders over the last 10 years. But Ryan Kerrigan at Purdue was, I would venture to say, maybe not a game wrecker, but he was definitely a guy that could take a lot of attention, especially playing for a team like Purdue. You throw him on the same defensive line with Jadeveon Clowney, somebody is getting through every single play. I love this group. I'm sure there's guys or there's people going to comment and say, man, how could you leave out so-and-so? I hear you. Aiden Hutchinson was a guy that I really wanted to put here, but Ryan Kerrigan was arguably more influential to me than Aiden Hutchinson. I guess that might be a little bit nostalgia hitting. I don't know. At defensive tackle, I picked three, and I got Aaron Donald, Brandon Graham, and Dominican Sue. All three of them guys rotating in and out would be unbelievable. I would absolutely love to see that group. My linebackers, on the outside, I'd have Luke Kuechly, Bobby Wagner. Luke Kuechly is, again, another guy who was influential. Boston College in that era was just something else. I mean, I don't know if I have to ask their girlfriend when she wakes up if I'm using the word aura correctly. But Luke Kuechly and that Boston College, those Boston College teams from the Matt Ryan era on through there, I think brought that level. The old ESPN graphics, Boston College, Chestnut Hill at night. I think they played Virginia Tech, especially in that 07 year. That to me was just so cool to see a school that I didn't know was as big as it was at the time, but to me was just a smaller school that not a lot of people talked about, and here they are up towards the top of the sport. Luke Kuechly certainly got on there, and then Bobby Wagner. I mean, he's as far as I'm aware, only G5 player to make these lists, and yeah, just making sure he's the only G5 player to make these lists, and it's because he was so influential for Utah State and what they were trying to become at the time. And I remember Chucky Keaton being their quarterback and them playing. I think it was Idaho Potato Bowl. I know it was that for a fact. Actually, it was a Bluefield over there in Boise, and they were playing against Ohio. And the only reason I was watching it was because of Ohio playing. Growing up local, the only Ohio team I liked was OU. And watching that game, Bobby Wagner, not sure if he was playing in that game, but knowing that he was a part of that team at some point. A guy that I've gone back and watched his college highlights, and he's just a just potential game wrecker. Again, to go with Kuechly, who do you defend? How do you defend that linebacker room? And then you got guys up the middle like Chris Borland, who would be my starting linebacker. He was one of my favorite and one of the toughest players I've ever seen on a football field. Former Wisconsin linebacker, was just unreal. I don't know how to explain these middle linebackers to you other than just go and watch them, because I got Chris Borland again. And then Patty Fisher, former Northwestern linebacker, was a really big deal, especially in the early to mid 2010s. Was just, these two guys are the definition of Big Ten football, and they're the definition of heart on the football field. They may not have had NFL careers that were overly exciting or really at all in the case of Patty Fisher, but these are two guys that if you watched them in college, that was the heart of a champion personified on the field. Those two are certainly going to stick around in that list for years to come. At safety, and I'm going to pair two safeties together here, Ed Reed and Sean Taylor. How do you not? Two of the best to ever do it, of course, for the Miami Hurricanes, and the two furthest out from their college careers. And of course, Sean Taylor, may he rest in peace. But I mean, you go back and watch those early 2000s Miami, especially their defensive highlights. Those two are in on everything. It's one of the most influential teams to present day college football that you will ever find. And it's so cool to know that it's out there to be able to go and find and see those teams specifically playing and getting to watch them face off against, I guess, Ohio State in the national championship. One of my, not my earliest memory, but one of the earliest games that I really ever got into. No, even with Ohio State winning it, from a fan perspective, those two guys just were unreal, I guess is the word I would use. And then to close this out, my cornerbacks, Aqib Talib, one of the best players in Kansas football history, and it would be outrageous to not include him in these lists. And Since I didn't have room for Tyrann Mathieu at safety, who was my first out at safety, Patrick Peterson goes at cornerback here. Part of what was an unreal era of LSU football. And then I pair them two up with Jalen Ramsey. And I don't know who would go slot corner here, but we've got three of the best college football cornerbacks to ever do it. Jalen Ramsey coming in and being third or maybe even on the outside, and Patrick Peterson, I think, being the more athletic guy to play interior. But however you wanted to do it, it would be unbelievable. And again, you get these guys coached with Nick Saban as a head coach, Ryan Day offensive coordinator, and Kirby Smart defensive coordinator. I mean, how do you go out and beat that team any given week? Granted, I mean, there's a lot of people and a lot of opinions, and there's so many guys that played college football that you could probably put together a lot of rosters from these first 25 years of the sport and the 2000s, and wonder how they would progress, how they would perform on the field against this team or any other team. But it would be an absolute blast to watch, and hopefully you guys at least enjoyed this a little bit, kind of understanding where I come from and how I, the guys that I've really watched, especially this being very heavily late 2000s to early 2010s, heavy in the rosters. Hopefully I gave you guys a little bit of an insight into where I come from as a fan, and kind of who some of my favorites are of all time. So I appreciate the idea, and any ideas down in the comments will be used at some point. And especially if they're in this week, I've got 2 days out of 3 that are left to be done that I have zero idea what we're going to do. So drop some comments. Let me know what you guys want to see, what you want to hear, and we will return tomorrow. I got no idea. I'm going to be honest. I have no clue what we're going to do for the show tomorrow. Well, so I do. If I have nothing else, we're going to look back at the Loudmouth Sports, the old Loudmouth CFB. We did our top 10 players since 2000 back in 2023, and we went through every position. Now I'm going to go back through those lists and find who and what I would change and who I might add in over the course of time, and who has kind of broke onto the scene since. I think it's a really cool idea. I thought it was a really cool idea at the time, and unfortunately those guys are not going to be available or will not be around for this iteration, but it's going to look pretty much the same, and we're just going to kind of see what I would change or what I would do a little bit differently, going back through and seeing how we progressed to where we did. So make sure you, again, like, subscribe, comment down below, and if you subscribe, hit the notification button. It'll let you know when every video uploads, but you can also see it down here on the bottom right. Every weekday, Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, and starting June 1st, that is a Sunday, we will go Sunday to Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern. Preview season kicks off for Florida State. You can follow me on social media, all of them down there on the bottom left. And again, we will see you tomorrow.